Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Imagine spending your entire marketing budget, right? Shouting at teenagers to buy your newest line of sneakers, only to realize, like, months later that the teenagers don't actually have the credit cards.
Right, the parents do.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
parents do. So today, we are looking at why bad data doesn't just cost you clicks. I mean, it loses you millions. We're just so glad you're joining us today for this special deep dive. We are unpacking this really incredibly insightful article from smartkeys.org. It's titled Analytics Maturity Model, Assisting Your Data-Driven Progress.
Yeah, and it's an essential piece of writing by Felix Römer. He's an expert with over 15 years embedded in e-commerce and digital marketing. So he has seen firsthand what happens when companies just completely misunderstand their own information.
Yeah, he really has. And our mission for you today is to extract the most strategic insights from this guide. We want to help you turn that raw, chaotic information into smarter decisions, but, without falling into the trap of overspending on shiny new technology.
Oh, for sure. And we need to emphasize right out of the gate, this is not about better spreadsheet management. We are talking about navigating massive shifts in global privacy, outsmarting competitors, and knowing precisely when and honestly when not to integrate artificial intelligence into your workflows.
Right, let's start with that landscape because the sense of urgency in Romer's piece is just palpable. There's this seismic shift happening that the industry calls the cookieless reality.
Yeah, the cookieless future.
Exactly. For years, businesses have relied on tracking cookies, right? Those little pieces of code that follow you from site to site so they can build profiles and target ads. But browsers are locking that down, and privacy laws are getting much, much stricter. So it seems to me that the real danger here isn't just losing the ability to stalk a consumer. It's losing the ability to prove your marketing works at all.
That is precisely the threat. I mean, the old, reliable third-party signals are basically going dark. So if your company hasn't built mechanisms to collect clean first-party data...
Meaning the info customers actually choose to share with you.
Right, exactly. Through purchases or accounts, direct interactions. If you don't have that, you essentially lose the map.
Which brings us right back to that sneaker anomaly. When your data attribution is fractured, you look at browsing behavior, and you just assume the teenager is the buyer.
Because that's what the surface-level data says.
Right. And so you misguide your entire campaign because you're targeting the enthusiast, not the purchaser.
Yeah.
It makes it so clear that having connected, accurate data isn't just some IT headache anymore. It is the core mechanism of your business strategy.
And yet, the temptation for most leadership teams right now is to try and just buy their way out of this problem with AI.
Oh, always.
They assume an artificial intelligence tool will just magically sift through the mess and, find the parents buying the sneakers.
Okay, let's unpack this instinct. Because dropping AI into a broken data system is basically like putting a Ferrari engine into a rusty go-kart.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. It won't help you win the race. The sheer torque of that engine is just going to tear the fragile cart completely apart. If your underlying data is fractured or inaccurate, AI doesn't solve the problem. It simply automates and scales your mistakes at lightning speed.
Yeah, the Ferrari in a go-kart is the perfect visualization of the mechanics at play here. The software acts as a multiplier. So if your baseline is 0, well, multiplying it by 1,000 still leaves you with 0. Or worse, a negative number. And the text highlights a fascinating point here. Felix writes, most leaders say culture and process block predictive work more than tech does.
Yes, that stood out to me as well. And if we look at the mechanics of a typical corporate culture, it makes total sense.
Sure.
Why do you think culture is a bigger roadblock than the actual technology?
Well, what's fascinating here is that you can buy the most sophisticated machine learning platform available, right? But if the sales team is financially incentivized to hoard their lead data...
Oh, right, the classic silo.
Exactly. Or if the marketing team refuses to standardize how they define a conversion, the software has nothing reliable to process. So the culture of operating in silos kills the AI initiative long before a technical bug ever will. Without a culture that prioritizes deep team alignment and data cleanliness, all that raw data you collect just fuels very expensive, highly automated guesswork.
Wow.
The culture defines the pipeline, and the pipeline defines the AI's success.
Okay, so if we accept that the rusty go-kart needs a complete overhaul before we can race, you need a blueprint. Which brings us to the core framework of today's source material, right? The analytics maturity model.
Yes.
This is the roadmap to get a business from guessing in the dark to automated brilliance. Rather than just listing these stages, Let's look at it like human development. You start out as a toddler making a mess, which is the unstructured phase.
Yeah, in the unstructured phase, you essentially have no strategy. It's a polluted river of data. You have scattered files, localized spreadsheets on different people's hard drives.
People emailing different versions of the same file.
Yeah, exactly. Entirely ad hoc analysis. If an executive asks a simple question, 3 different analysts pull data from 3 different parts of the system and return with 3 completely different answers.
Because they are all flying blind. So to solve that toddler phase, an organization realizes they have to move to the next stage, the foundational stage. This is where you actually learn to walk. You establish data management, basic governance, and clear ownership.
Right. The foundational stage is really all about trust. You are building trusted pipelines and standardized definitions so that when someone... But just knowing what happened isn't enough to actually change a business strategy, right? Once you see a sudden drop in a metric, you need to know why it dropped. And that requires an operational shift into the diagnostic stage.
Right, so in the diagnostic stage, you aren't just looking at the dashboard anymore, you're investigating it. You start comparing different periods, slicing the data by regions or, customer segments to find the root cause. You are actively tracing the pipes back to find the leak.
And this is where the math has to evolve. To move beyond diagnosing the past, you enter the predictive stage. Now you are answering what will happen.
Oh, so looking ahead.
Yes. You begin using historical patterns and statistical models to forecast future outcomes. You know that based on the last 5 years of data, when the temperature drops, demand for a certain product spikes.
But forecasting the weather doesn't automatically build you an umbrella, right? So the organization has to push into the prescriptive stage. This answers the critical question. How should we act?
Yes, exactly.
You aren't just predicting a spike in demand. You are running what-if scenarios. The data system is actively optimizing your choices, recommending how to adjust supply chains or ad budgets, which makes you like a chess grandmaster seeing 10 moves ahead. And that culminates in the final apex of the model, which is cognitive.
Right, cognitive. This is where your centralized data is now interacting with machine learning and NLP, natural language processing.
Wait, doesn't every business leader reading this just want to skip straight to the cognitive grandmaster phase?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to spend 2 years doing foundational data governance when vendors are promising real-time NLP insights today.
Oh, absolutely. It's entirely human nature to want the highest return immediately. But what's fascinating here is that progress through this model is rarely a perfectly linear upward slope.
Really?
Yeah, an organization might be fantastic at building beautiful descriptive dashboards, but if they are terrible at foundational governance, these dashboards are essentially lying to you in high definition.
Oh, wow. Because if nobody knows where the data came from, or if it hasn't been clean, the visualization is worthless.
Exactly. The model makes it clear. You cannot do high-value predictive forecasting if the underlying data is a disorganized mess. Foundational steps like governance and ownership, those are non-negotiable prerequisites.
That makes total sense.
And it is worth noting that Felix Römer points out this isn't the only framework out there. Different models highlight different blind spots. Like Gartner's maturity model focuses heavily on being question-driven and aligning data strictly with business outcomes.
Right, while the SaaS model leans into scorecards and capability checkpoints, measuring specific technical skills.
Exactly. And the OECD framework focuses deeply on the policy side, like governance and ethical use. They all describe a similar evolutionary path, but they force an organization to view their progress through different lenses.
Okay, let's pivot to the practical application for you, the listener. We've mapped out this evolutionary journey from the unstructured toddler to the cognitive grandmaster, but how do you actually figure out where your specific team stands right now? Where does that audit start?
The author suggests starting with a raw inventory. You have to literally map out your pipes. You list your internal sources, so your CRM, your web tracking, customer feedback. Then you list your external feeds, like advertising platform.
You gather all the sources, and then you have to ask targeted questions. Who actually has access? Is the data set complete? And latency is a big one, right?
Latency is crucial. It refers to the delay between when an event happens and when it actually shows up in your system. If you are trying to make real-time ad decisions, but your data latency is 24 hours.
You're always reacting to yesterday's news.
Precisely.
So if I'm a manager feeling overwhelmed by all these tools, what's the very first blocker I should look for when doing this audit?
The very first thing you look for is governance blocking reuse. So you locate a data set and ask, who owns this? And more importantly, Are there internal policies or cultural habits preventing other teams from utilizing it?
Back to the silos.
Always. If marketing has brilliant behavioral data but refuses to share it with product development because of a lack of clear handoff processes, that silo is your immediate bottleneck. Breaking down those silos is step one.
Right. And once you've audited the sources and addressed the silos, you have to ensure your tech stack actually aligns with your current maturity stage. If you were the foundational stage, you shouldn't be buying cognitive machine learning platforms.
Exactly. You have to match the tool to the specific skill level of your users. For example, if you are at the descriptive stage, business intelligence tools, your BI dashboards like Tableau or Power BI, those are perfect. They let non-technical users get quick, reliable visualizations.
But BI tools have limits, don't they? If you suddenly need to run complex diagnostic queries across millions of raw rows from 10 different sources, a standard BI tool is going to choke.
Oh, it'll completely freeze. That is why, as you scale toward the predictive stages, you need a data warehouse, like BigQuery. A data warehouse separates storage from computing power, allowing you to house massive amounts of raw information and query it at incredible speeds.
And sitting between that raw storage and the final dashboard is the transformation layer. The article mentions dbt. If your data engineers are writing hundreds of complex lines of SQL code to reshape the data, you need a tool to manage and test that code so it doesn't break every time an engineer goes on vacation.
Right. You only introduce those complex layers and eventually machine learning platforms when you have passed the foundational stages, established a consistent truth, and are truly ready to productionize those learnings.
The text also highlights that as your tech stack matures, the actual metrics you care about have to evolve. In the unstructured phase, companies obsess over simple totals, like, we got 10,000 page views today.
Right, totals are vanity metrics. They tell you what happened, but they are completely useless when it comes to deciding how to act tomorrow.
Yes. As you move into the diagnostic and predictive stages, you shift your focus to behavioral signals. You stop caring about the raw number of page views and start tracking the specific sequence of clicks that explains why a customer abandoned their shopping cart. You move from counting things to understanding behavior.
Because behavioral signals answer the why and how, they're actionable.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the daily grind? We've audited the tools, mapped the stages, talked about silos, but what is the practical dollars and cents value of executing this strategy? How does a team pull this off without turning it into a massive, exhausting, multi-year initiative?
Well, the article provides a fantastic marketing case study. Let's look at a team that evolves their capability. Initially, they are just using descriptive dashboards to see how a campaign performed last month.
Standard rearview mirror stuff.
Right. But as they develop diagnostic capabilities, they start linking specific conversions to specific channels. They realize social media drives traffic, but email marketing actually closes the sale.
They find the sneaker parents.
Exactly. Then, reaching the predictive stage, they start forecasting seasonal demand. They test creative strategies for buyers versus end users. Ultimately, in the prescriptive stage, the system is actively analyzing constraints and recommending how to shift ad spend in real time to maximize predicted lift.
That transition is massive, but getting there requires investment. How do you measure ROI during this transition?
You have to track metrics tied to business outcomes. You report revenue uplift, cost reduction from shutting down bad ad channels, and the literal hours of time saved. And the author recommends maintaining a benefits register.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It sounds like admin overhead, but it's really a survival tool, isn't it?
It is. It's a running ledger of cumulative impact. Every time a small data improvement saves money or time, you log it to prove the compounding value of the foundational work. Which brings us to the smartest piece of advice in the text. Start small.
Start small. It sounds simple, but it is incredibly difficult for ambitious companies to actually do.
It really is. The instinct is to say, we are going to completely revamp our global data architecture over the next 3 years. And those projects almost always fail. They lose momentum. This is where breaking work into short, agile sprints is vital.
So instead of rebuilding the entire treatment plant at once, you say, for the next 2 weeks, we are only going to fix the pipeline feeding our abandoned cart emails.
Exactly. You isolate one problem, solve it, log it in your benefits register, and move on. By producing these visible, repeatable wins, you deliver incremental value. And psychologically, this pacing prevents your new tech from outpacing your team's actual skills.
Right, they learn together. It becomes a culture of hygiene, not a top-down mandate.
Exactly.
And I think that completely reframes the intimidation factor here. It's about having the discipline to fix one broken pipe today and another next week.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. We are all racing toward that final cognitive stage, right?
Yeah, the fully automated future. But think about your own daily workflows. When you create a new spreadsheet or launch a quick campaign, are you building a solid first-party data foundation? Or are you just adding to the unstructured mess? Are you a data builder or a data silo? Because if a machine learns from our past mistakes without understanding the context, we might just be automating our own blind spots at scale.
It forces you to realize that data quality is the ethical and strategic bedrock of your company's future.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the SmartKeys podcast. We absolutely love taking these deep dives with you.
It has been an absolute pleasure parsing through this.
We want to explicitly thank you for spending your valuable time with us today. If you found this breakdown insightful, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a deep dive. And we highly encourage you to go read Felix Römer's full article. It is packed with even more granular detail, and you can find the link to it right down in the show notes. Until next time, keep building those solid foundations, and we will see you on the next deep dive.